He was a billionaire, a king in a glass tower, used to women falling at his feet with a smile and a secret agenda. But the moment Zara Lane said no, she didn't just reject his charm, she shattered his illusion of control. Now, for the first time in his life, the man who had everything is chasing the one woman who wants nothing from him. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The city glittered beneath him like a field of diamonds, but Ethan Blackwood wasn't looking. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse office, staring into the darkening horizon, drink in hand, mind elsewhere. Behind him, the hum of Blackwood International pulsed through the 89th floor, the after-hours murmur of executive assistants and late-night dealmakers. But for Ethan, the day was only just beginning. He checked his Rolex, 8:37 p.m. Right on time. A soft knock sounded on the door. Vanessa, his assistant of 4 months, walked in wearing a sleek black dress far too revealing for office hours. She held a folder in one hand, a smile on her lips, and something else in her eyes, hope. Ethan turned and gestured toward the sleek glass desk. "Put it down," he said coolly, setting his drink aside. Vanessa approached, placing the folder down but lingering. "Anything else you need before I head out, Mr. Blackwood?" Ethan's eyes flicked up, scanning her without warmth. "No, that'll be all." She hesitated. He noticed, he always noticed. But he didn't stop her as she turned and walked out, the rejection landing softly like a whisper behind her heels. Ethan was tired of the game. He had played it too long, too effortlessly. Women had become predictable. Some were subtle, most were bold. Some tried professionalism first, then flirtation. Others skipped straight to seduction. Either way, it always ended the same. With a drink, a night, a goodbye, and no second thoughts. At 35, Ethan had everything a man could want. Wealth that touched every corner of the globe, a legacy built from blood and brilliance, and a presence that demanded obedience. Boardrooms bowed to him. Governments sought his influence. Women chased him with the feverish energy of moths to flame. And yet he was bored. Not that he'd ever admit it. To the world, Ethan Blackwood was a god among men. The tabloids called him the untouchable king. They speculated on his love life, his mysterious past, the string of models and heiresses photographed on his yacht or entering his townhouse. He never addressed the rumors. He didn't need to. Silence was its own kind of power. But beneath the $1,000 suits and the custom-made life, Ethan felt the hollowness growing. He had fought tooth and nail to get to the top. But what waited for him there? More power, more control, more games. His phone buzzed. A message from PR. "Final interviews for the executive associate position tomorrow. Your 10 a.m. is with Zara Lane. Stanford grad. Strong credentials. No media presence. Attached resume." Ethan clicked the profile. The photo was modest, a headshot with no filters, no pretense. She had large, curious eyes, sharp cheekbones, and full lips that didn't smile for the camera. There was something off about her. Or maybe it was something real. He leaned back in his chair, staring at her photo longer than he should have. There was something in her face he couldn't name, self-possession maybe. Or indifference. The kind of look he wasn't used to seeing in women who wanted to work for him. Most came prepared to impress. To charm. To be noticed. She didn't look like she gave a damn whether she was noticed or not. Ethan's lips curved just slightly. Interesting. The next morning, the 89th floor buzzed with movement. The executive boardroom had been set for final interviews. 4 candidates, 1 position, and a panel of senior staff. Ethan rarely sat in on interviews anymore. He trusted his people. But today he made an exception. Zara Lane walked in at precisely 9:58 a.m. Ethan watched her from the far end of the table, unnoticed at first. She wore a navy blouse tucked into slate-gray trousers, no jewelry except a slim silver watch. Her curls were pulled into a low bun, her makeup minimal. She carried no designer bag, no perfume cloud, no prepackaged persona. She looked around the room, found his eyes, and nodded once. Just a nod. No blush, no smile. Just acknowledgement. She sat. One of the directors, Mr. Hensley, began the formalities. Questions on logistics, strategy, ethics. Zara answered with calm intelligence. She challenged respectfully, cited facts, navigated trick questions like a chess master. When Ethan finally spoke, the room quieted. Mississippi Lane, he said, fingers steepled beneath his chin. What made you apply here, specifically? She turned to him with a composed expression. I've followed Blackwood International for years. The global expansion strategy was aggressive but smart. Your acquisition of Solvtech last year was the cleanest hostile takeover I've ever studied. I admire precision. And I like solving impossible problems. Ethan raised a brow. And the culture? Zara paused for the first time. To be honest, the culture concerns me. A murmur spread through the panel. Ethan's interest peaked. Go on, he said. Blackwood has a reputation for being male-dominated, competitive to the point of toxicity. Promotions often align more with personal connections than professional metrics. Silence. Ethan's mouth curled slightly. And you still applied? I don't avoid hard things, she said. I confront them. The room was still. Ethan's eyes stayed on her for a long beat, his thoughts unreadable. Then he nodded. Noted. Later that afternoon, the hiring team gathered for deliberations. She's overqualified, said one director. Too blunt, muttered another. She's the best one, Ethan said simply. Hire her. No one argued. That evening, as Ethan sat in his private lounge sipping bourbon, he stared again at Zara Lane's profile on his tablet. She had said no without saying it. No to flattery. No to fear. No to him in a way no woman ever had. And that was the moment Ethan Blackwood, the man who thought he'd seen everything, realized his next obsession wouldn't be a woman he could possess. It would be a woman he would have to earn. And that changed everything. Monday morning arrived with the usual rhythm. Sharp heels tapping against marble floors, elevator chimes echoing across polished corridors, and the scent of fresh coffee lingering in the air. The 89th floor of Blackwood International was a temple to efficiency, and its priests, the elite executives, moved with purpose. No one lingered. No one slacked. And everyone made sure to be at their desk before he arrived. Zara Lane had been there since 7:15 a.m. She sat quietly in her glass-walled cubicle just outside the executive wing. Already on her second meeting of the day, deep in discussion over budget models for an upcoming pitch. Her screen was filled with color-coded spreadsheets, her voice calm and decisive as she spoke through her wireless headset. There was no fumbling, no awkward first-day jitters. She belonged here, and she knew it. What she didn't know was that Ethan Blackwood had been watching her since she walked in. He stood behind the tinted glass of his corner office, one hand tucked in his pocket, eyes narrowed slightly. Zara's presence was unlike anything he'd seen in this office in years. She didn't preen, she didn't seek approval, and most importantly, she didn't acknowledge him beyond what was necessary. She was magnetic precisely because she wasn't trying to be. At 9:04 a.m., she knocked once on his door. He turned just as she entered, holding a leather-bound folder. Morning, Mr. Blackwood. Here's the preliminary forecast you asked for. I took the liberty of running a second model based on variable interest rates. Her tone was professional, clear, and brisk. She didn't sit. She didn't flirt. She didn't even hesitate. He took the folder from her, eyes briefly scanning the top page. This is clean work, he said. You've got a good eye. She nodded once. Thank you. Let me know if you'd like me to revise anything. And just like that, she turned and walked out. No lingering. No glancing back. No attempt to start a conversation. Ethan watched the door close behind her, slightly amused. Most new hires would have basked in that compliment. Most would have looked for a thread to pull, a chance to impress him more. Zara left like she had a dozen better things to do. And maybe she did. By noon, he was watching her again. She was in a meeting with two directors, speaking firmly but respectfully as she challenged a cost assumption that had been used in a previous acquisition. The directors, both seasoned and older, weren't used to being corrected, let alone by a new hire. But Zara didn't flinch. She had facts, and she knew how to use them. That evening, Ethan made his move. At 7:03 p.m., as Zara was packing up her things, her office phone rang. "Zara Lane," she answered. Ethan's voice came through low and smooth. "I'd like to talk about your projections. Join me for dinner?" There was a pause. Not hesitation, calculation. "Dinner?" she repeated. "My car's downstairs," he said. She didn't answer immediately. "Respectfully, Mr. Blackwood," she said, "I prefer to keep work and personal separate. If you'd like to schedule a meeting during business hours, I'd be happy to." His brow arched. He wasn't used to people turning down a private invitation, especially not from their boss. Especially not when that boss was him. "I assure you it would be strictly professional," he said. "I'm sure it would," she replied. "But optics matter. And I've only just started here. Good night." Click. She hung up. For a moment, Ethan stared at his phone, stunned into silence. That had never happened before. Not once. Not in 15 years. He had expected some version of, "I'd be delighted." Or maybe, "Are you sure?" followed by a flirtatious laugh. Instead, he got a polite, firm no. He couldn't stop thinking about it. The next day, he passed her in the hall. "Morning," he said. "Morning," she returned, not stopping. No flinch. No fawning. By Thursday, the office was buzzing. Rumors circulated. Zara had rejected Ethan Blackwood. The Ethan Blackwood. Women whispered in bathrooms, speculating wildly. Some called her foolish. Others a legend. One assistant even tried to befriend her over coffee just to get the inside scoop. Zara smiled politely and kept the conversation strictly work-related. That same afternoon, Ethan invited the executive team to the boardroom for drinks after hours. Zara attended, professional as always, standing at the far end with a glass of water and a neutral expression. Ethan watched her all night. She never once approached him. Instead, she engaged in sharp, insightful conversation with the CFO, even impressing the notoriously prickly VP of Legal. At one point, Vanessa, his former assistant, now reassigned, brushed up next to him. "So," she purred, "the new girl's got claws." Ethan didn't answer. His eyes were on Zara. He was used to women bending to him. Zara Lane wasn't bending. She wasn't impressed. She was winning respect the right way, without him. And for the first time in a long, long time, Ethan Blackwood felt the unfamiliar twinge of something he hadn't experienced since his early 20s. Pursuit. Not of power. Not of money. But of a woman who didn't want him, and didn't need him. And that made her more valuable than anything in his empire. The first time Ethan Blackwood found himself waiting near the office cafe, he convinced himself it was a coincidence. He checked his phone, looked out over the skyline, and made a mental note to approve the new marketing budget. But the truth was, he already knew Zara took her coffee break at exactly 3:15 p.m. She always ordered an Americano, no sugar, no cream. Straightforward, just like her. When she walked in, she wore that same unreadable expression, half serious, half lost in thought. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, her posture straight but unpretentious. She didn't even glance at him as she passed, sliding her ID badge to pay for her coffee. It was like he wasn't even there. "Afternoon," he said casually. Zara turned to look at him. A flicker of recognition. "Mr. Blackwood." "Ethan," he corrected, offering a small smile. She lifted her cup. "I prefer to keep titles at work." And just like that, she turned and walked away. He watched her go, amused and irritated in equal measure. She wasn't playing hard to get. She wasn't playing at all. That weekend, Ethan found himself reviewing internal reports late into Saturday night. He didn't need to. His team handled them well enough. But buried in one of Zara's analytics reports was a handwritten note. Projected dip in Q3 if client retention continues to drop. Suggest restructuring loyalty tiers. No one else had caught it. On Monday, he brought it up in the leadership meeting. I want her in the next client strategy session, he said. But sir, someone began. She's only 2 weeks in. She saw something the rest of you didn't. That shut the room up. Later that afternoon, he dropped by her desk without warning. Zara glanced up, not startled, but clearly surprised. Mr. Blackwood, she said, setting her pen down. Something I can help you with? I added you to tomorrow's strategy session. You flagged something important. Good work. She blinked once. Thank you. He paused. Then, a bit too casually, I don't suppose you'd reconsider that dinner. Just business, of course. Zara leaned back slightly in her chair, folding her hands in her lap. Why me? She asked. He wasn't expecting that. What do you mean? I'm sure you've asked women out before. Probably not even twice. So why try again? He studied her. That steady gaze. No fear. No flirtation. Just a quiet challenge. You're not like the others, he said honestly. That's not a compliment, she replied. That's a comparison. She stood. And I already told you, I'm not here for dinner. I'm here to work. And she walked past him, leaving the scent of lavender and coffee trailing behind. Ethan spent the next week in an unfamiliar state of confusion. Zara's presence unsettled him. She was neither rude nor friendly, just neutral. She did her work exceptionally well, never late, never sloppy. But she didn't linger in meetings. She didn't try to impress. And she didn't acknowledge his efforts to connect outside of work. Still, something was changing. He found himself asking about her projects in meetings, watching her from across the room as she presented strategies with composure beyond her years. She never stumbled, never deferred to others. She stood on her merit, and others were beginning to notice. Even his closest advisors began to question him. Is she just really good? Asked Lucas, his CFO, after one meeting. Or are you giving her special treatment? Ethan didn't answer, because the truth was she was really good, and he was giving her special treatment. Not out of desire, but because she earned it. A week later, he found her working late, the office dim and quiet around her. Everyone else had gone home. Her desk lamp glowed softly as she typed, headphones in, unaware of his presence. He knocked lightly on the glass wall. She looked up, startled this time. He stepped in, holding 2 paper cups. Peace offering, he said, handing her a coffee. She hesitated, then took it. Thank you. I'm not here to ask you out again, he added. Promise. She nodded, motioning to the guest chair. He sat. A long silence passed between them, filled only by the quiet hum of the city below. You're not who I expected, she said finally. Ethan looked over at her. No, you're supposed to be arrogant. Cold. Dangerous, even. That's what everyone says. He tilted his head. And what do you say? She sipped her coffee. I think you're very good at pretending you don't need people. He laughed, genuinely, for the first time in weeks. And I think you're very good at pretending I don't intrigue you. She smiled, just faintly. I don't pretend, she said. I avoid distractions. Is that what I am? Potentially. He leaned forward. Let me prove I'm not. Zara met his gaze. You can't. Not here. Not like this. A beat of silence. Then she stood, gently placing the coffee cup on the desk. Good night, Mr. Blackwood. He watched her walk out again. But this time she looked back. Just once. And for Ethan, that was the first crack in the wall she'd built. A glance. A signal. A beginning. The morning after Zara looked back. That one glance haunted Ethan Blackwood like a song you hear once and can't forget. It wasn't flirtatious or hesitant. It wasn't full of longing. It was a simple, fleeting moment of curiosity, of consideration. And it changed something in him. He didn't tell anyone. But he felt it. A subtle shift in his rhythm, his thinking. The way he moved through the day. He began arriving earlier, staying later, not because he needed to, but because he wanted to be around when she was. When she spoke in meetings, he didn't just listen. He absorbed. He challenged her ideas, not to prove her wrong, but to pull more from her. She rose to every occasion. And the more he saw, the more he realized how small his world had been before her. One evening, Ethan sat in the back seat of his Bentley, his driver cruising through uptown Manhattan. But instead of heading home to his penthouse, he told the driver to take a detour. To the east side, he said. 161st and Ridge. The driver glanced at him in the mirror. Sir, you heard me. They pulled up to a quiet, aging brownstone, the kind Ethan hadn't been near in years. It was the building his mother lived in, or had the last time he checked. He sat in the car for a full minute, engine humming, fingers twitching against his leg. Finally, he opened the door and stepped out. The intercom buzzed twice before a tired voice answered. Hello. It's Ethan. Silence. Ethan Blackwood? She asked, cautious, incredulous. Yes. More silence. Then the door clicked open. They hadn't spoken in 5 years. Not since the lawsuit. Not since the tabloids printed stories about how Ethan had turned his back on the woman who raised him. There was truth in the stories. Ugly truth he hadn't wanted to face. His ambition had swallowed every part of him, even the part that once believed in loyalty. Now, as he sat across from her in a modest living room with peeling paint and a ticking wall clock, he felt like a boy again. You look tired, his mother said, placing a cup of tea in front of him. He stared down at it. You always made it with mint. I still do. Some things don't change. He didn't know what to say. He hadn't known for 5 years. Finally, he spoke. I'm sorry. She said nothing, just sipped her tea. And in the silence, Ethan realized something. Zara had ignited the courage in him. Not with affection, not with approval, but by forcing him to see what kind of man he'd become. And what kind of man he might be. The transformation began subtly. He walked through the office differently, not with arrogance, but awareness. He started clearing his schedule for employees beneath the executive level. He attended a junior analyst pitch session and stayed until the end. People whispered. Some were suspicious. Others were curious. The most confused was his assistant, Camille. You canceled the trip to Dubai? She asked one morning, blinking at her tablet. I did. Sir, that deal is worth $80 million. They'll wait. Camille paused. You're changing things. He didn't answer. Just looked out the window. But the biggest change came the day he sat down with HR. I want a full review of our leadership policies, he said. The director of HR looked startled. In what way? Mentorship programs. Promotions. Gender ratios. Code of conduct enforcement. I want transparency and I want change. Is this about the press? Ethan narrowed his eyes. No. This is about the culture I allowed to rot under me. Fix it, or I'll find someone who will. By the time Zara heard about it, whispers had already spread. She was reading through quarterly reports when Lucas, the CFO, stopped by her desk. You're turning the company upside down, Mississippi Lane, he said with a half smile. She looked up. Excuse me? Don't play coy. Word is our fearless leader is rewriting the book because of you. I haven't asked him to do anything, she replied, confused. Exactly, Lucas said. That's why it's working. That evening, Ethan found himself alone again, this time on the rooftop of Blackwood Tower. He leaned against the railing, tie loosened, hair slightly tousled from the wind. The city stretched beneath him like a living organism, vibrant, chaotic, unstoppable, just like the company he'd built. And yet, for the first time, he didn't feel like a king. He felt like a man, a flawed, striving, uncertain man trying to be better. He heard the elevator doors open behind him. Footsteps. He turned. Zara stood there, arms folded loosely, gaze calm. I heard about the HR changes, she said. That was unexpected. He gave a soft smile. You inspired it. I didn't ask you to. I know. That's why it mattered. They stood in silence for a while, the wind tugging at her curls, the night thick with unspoken things. You're different, she said finally, from who you were a few weeks ago. He looked down. I'm trying. She nodded. I can see that. A pause. I don't trust easily, she added. Not in this industry. Not with men like you. I know, he said quietly. She stepped closer, not touching, but near enough to feel her presence. But I respect effort, she said. Then she turned to leave. Just before she stepped back into the elevator, she looked over her shoulder. One coffee. No dinner. No flirting. Just two people talking. The doors closed. And Ethan stood alone, heart beating faster than it had in years, a quiet smile forming on his face. It wasn't a date. It wasn't a victory. It was something far rarer. A beginning built on respect. Zara felt it before she saw it. The air was different when she entered the building that morning. Electric, charged with unspoken tension. Conversations paused as she passed. People glanced too long, too quickly. There were whispers, half-smiles, narrowed eyes. One junior analyst even moved aside in the elevator without explanation, as if her mere presence made him uncomfortable. Something was wrong. When she reached her desk, her screen was already flooded. Internal messages. Slack pings. 3 unread emails from HR. Her stomach tightened. She clicked on the first link someone had sent anonymously. CEO Ethan Blackwood's new favorite employee, private dinners, late-night rides, and office gossip. The Watchdog Weekly. Beneath the headline was a grainy photo of her stepping into Ethan's black Bentley 2 weeks ago. The angle was invasive, clearly shot from across the street. Another photo showed them in the lobby late one evening, leaving the building just minutes apart. Her face. His name. The article suggested everything it shouldn't: favoritism, impropriety, an unspoken relationship. Zara's heart dropped into her stomach. Her mouth went dry. No quotes. No sources. Just speculation. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. Ethan didn't find out until 9:17 a.m. He was finishing a call with the London office when Camille burst in without knocking. Something she hadn't done in the 5 months since she became his assistant. "You need to see this," she said, tossing a tablet onto his desk. He read it silently. No emotion showed on his face at first. His eyes scanned the photos, the cheap tabloid headline, the fabricated story. Then a slow, cold fury settled behind his eyes. "Who leaked this?" he asked. "We're running internal checks now. IT is digging through communications and access logs. But it's already out there. Twitter's exploding. So is LinkedIn. Some of the comments. Does Zara know?" Camille hesitated. "She was at her desk when I came in. Now she's gone." Ethan stood. The chair behind him rolled back silently. "Clear my day." "Sir, you heard me. Cancel everything. But you have the investor. Everything." He didn't wait for a reply. He was already out the door. He found her in the executive stairwell, 5 floors down, sitting on the concrete steps like she'd run out of places to be alone. Her phone was off. Her blazer tossed beside her. Her hands were clenched in her lap, jaw tight. He stepped into the stairwell, the heavy door closing behind him with a metallic clang. Zara didn't look up. "I assume you've seen it," she said. "I have." Another silence. He took a few steps down, slowly, and sat 2 stairs below her so she wouldn't feel cornered. "I didn't expect this," she said, voice thin but steady. "I knew people would talk. I didn't think it would get published." Ethan looked over at her, his expression unreadable. "You've done nothing wrong. That doesn't matter." Her voice cracked slightly then, just a fracture in her composure. But she didn't let it break her. "I worked hard for everything I have. Do you know how hard it is to get taken seriously as a woman in finance? In tech, I've walked into rooms where I was assumed to be the assistant, or the intern. Not once did I let it get to me. And now," she shook her head, "now I'm a story. A scandal." She looked up at him, eyes sharp. "You should have known this would happen." He flinched visibly. "You made me visible," she continued. "Not because of my ideas. Not because of my work. Because you started hovering. Because you treated me like I was different. And I kept trying to pretend it didn't matter. But it did." Ethan stared at the stair below them, jaw tight. He hadn't felt helpless in years. But here now with her? He didn't have a single solution that didn't feel like a power move. "I'll deny it," he said quietly. "I'll call a press conference. I'll say the photos are taken out of context, that we've never." "No." She stood abruptly. "That would make it worse. If you speak for me, I become the girl who had to be rescued. I lose either way. What do you want me to do then? He asked, standing too. Zara turned to face him. She looked exhausted but strong. I want you to see what it costs me just to be in your orbit. I want you to understand that your power doesn't come without a shadow. You don't get to rewrite the rules for one woman just because she made you feel something. He didn't speak. She exhaled slowly, defeated. I'm resigning. No, it's not a negotiation. Then don't resign, he said, his voice low, almost hoarse. Take a leave. A break. Let this blow over. And then what? Come back to the same stairs? The same questions. Every win questioned. Every raise seen as a reward for what? Being attractive enough to catch your attention. She picked up her blazer, her hands shaking only slightly now. I thought you were changing, she said, softer now. I am, he replied. Then change the system. Not just for me. For everyone. She turned and walked up the stairs without another word. He didn't follow her. He couldn't. She submitted her resignation the next morning via encrypted email. No drama. No goodbye speech. She simply cleared her desk before dawn and walked out of Blackwood Tower with a single box in her arms and her head held high. Ethan stood in his office, staring down at the street below as she disappeared into the crowd. Camille came in behind him. Press wants a statement. Give them one, he said without turning. What should I say? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, say nothing. And when she left, Ethan finally sat down, alone for once, not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, not as a man used to winning, but as a man who realized he had just lost the first person who ever made him want to be better. And this time, he had no one to blame but himself. The office felt colder without her. Days passed. Then a week. Then two. Zara's absence left more than an empty desk. It left a silence that seeped through the marble walls of Blackwood Tower. Conversations around the 89th floor were quieter. The executive boardroom felt heavier. Even Ethan's footsteps seemed slower, his voice lower, his meetings shorter. She had left without a trace. No contact, no forwarding information, no lingering presence. Just gone. Ethan buried himself in work. Not as an escape, but as an act of reconstruction. He was rebuilding the thing he thought he had mastered. Himself. He attended meetings with departments he'd once ignored. He personally interviewed candidates for Zara's replacement, though none were hired. Not because they weren't good, but because none of them asked hard questions. None of them told the truth. None of them looked at him without blinking. He overhauled the internal mentorship program, bringing in third-party equity consultants. He revised executive hiring policies, introduced anonymous promotion reviews. He even initiated mandatory leadership ethics training for every VP in the company, including himself. It wasn't performative. It was painful, and it was long overdue. 2 months later, Zara stood before a small glass building in Brooklyn, her coat buttoned up against the wind. The name of the nonprofit was printed in clean black letters above the doorway. Anchor, empowering young women in business. She had joined as a financial strategist, part-time at first. But the more time she spent there, the more she realized how different it felt to build something that didn't require sacrificing herself to be taken seriously. She worked alongside other women who had been burned by the corporate world. Fired for speaking out, passed over for raises, whispered about for things they never did. Here, she wasn't a headline. She was heard. And yet, late at night, her mind still drifted. To a rooftop conversation. To a cup of black coffee offered without expectation. To a man trying, genuinely trying, to change. She hadn't forgiven him. Not yet. But she hadn't forgotten either. The day Ethan Blackwood walked into the Anchor headquarters, no one recognized him at first. He wasn't in a suit. He wore a charcoal sweater, dark jeans, and no watch. No entourage. No driver. Just a man carrying a slim leather envelope and a nervous energy that didn't suit him. He asked for Zara. The receptionist hesitated. Do you have an appointment? No, he admitted. But I'm hoping she'll take a chance on me. She was in the back room, hunched over a whiteboard, analyzing budgeting tiers for their new mentoring grant when the receptionist knocked lightly. Zara? There's someone here to see you. She didn't ask who. She knew. She stepped into the front office and stopped in her tracks. He was taller than she remembered. Or maybe he just looked more human now. His hair was slightly longer. His eyes a little heavier. And when he saw her, he smiled, but there was no swagger. No presumption. Just quiet relief. "Hi," he said. She nodded, her expression unreadable. "Ethan." He stepped forward, holding the envelope between his hands. "I won't take more than 5 minutes." She crossed her arms. "You've already had 2. He smiled. "Fair." He opened the envelope and pulled out a printed document. She glanced at it, skeptical. It wasn't a contract. Or a press statement. It was a letter. Handwritten. "I launched a new program last week," he said. "Internal scholarships for underrepresented female leadership candidates. Paid mentorship. Fast-track career development. No strings. No media." She raised an eyebrow. "Okay. I named the first scholarship after you." Zara blinked. "You what?" He handed her the letter. At the top, the Zara Lane Fellowship for Ethical Leadership. "I didn't ask for this," she said softly. "I know," he replied. "That's why it means something." She stared at the paper in her hands. He watched her in silence, resisting every urge to speak. "I wasn't trying to change you," she finally said. "I was just trying to protect myself." "I know," he said. "But you changed me anyway." Zara met his gaze. For the first time, he looked tired. Not from work. From trying to be someone new without asking for a reward. He reached into his coat pocket again and handed her a second sheet of paper. "What is this?" "A proposal." Her heart stilled. "Not for marriage," he clarified quickly, chuckling nervously. "For a conversation. Coffee. A walk. Your terms. Your pace. No press. No pressure." She stared at him for a long time. "You're serious?" "I am." She glanced down at the form. A simple line at the bottom. "Yes, I'll consider it." "No, thank you." She looked back up at him. Then, slowly, deliberately, she took out a pen from her coat pocket and checked the first box. He exhaled, like a man who had been holding his breath for 2 months. "I'm not promising anything," she said. "I'm not asking for anything," he replied. "Just coffee. Just you." She hesitated. "You're late." "I already had mine." "I'll have a second cup." She shook her head, but there was the hint of a smile, small, cautious, but real. "I know a place down the block," she said. He opened the door for her. She walked through. And as they stepped out into the busy Brooklyn street, side by side, something new began. Not with grand declarations, not with flowers, not with power, but with 2 people who had seen each other at their worst. And still chose to try again. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.